The Empire stretched across 1,000 star systems, a lattice of cold dominion threaded together by trade routes and military power. Its aristocrats dined beneath glass domes orbiting dying suns, confident no race beneath them could ever threaten their reign. They enslaved lesser species with the efficiency of accountants balancing ledgers, never questioning their own supremacy. New worlds were cataloged, stripped, and plundered, their populations reduced to resources to be processed and sold. Among the newest entries in their databanks was a small, blue-green planet at the edge of mapped space, filed under primitive, low threat, high yield. Humanity barely warranted a footnote. Scattered surveys marked its people as adaptable, unremarkable bipeds with no centralized government and insufficient technology to defend themselves. The Empire's markets hunger for labor that could survive harsh conditions, and humans appeared well-suited. There were already whispers in the criminal sectors of isolated disappearances, lone hikers, drifting fishing boats, remote settlements subtly emptied, but no one looked closely. Why investigate missing primitives? They were only raw material. On the dark side of a quiet forest world, far from cities and signal grids, a boy lived with his mother in a cabin of wood and iron nails hammered by hand. No power cells hummed in its walls. No artificial satellites tracked its roof. He ran barefoot through the pine needle paths and learned to read the stars not by chart, but by memory. He listened to the wind and named every bird call. At night, he felt the forest breathing with him, as if every tree leaned closer to listen. The world seemed to know him, as though invisible eyes guarded every step. Travelers who wandered too close to the cabin sometimes turned back without reason, unsettled by the way the woods grew suddenly silent. The boy's mother spoke little of herself. Her hands were scarred in ways no farmer's work explained. Strangers who glimpsed her face said her gaze lingered too long, weighing them like stones on a scale. Hunters swore wolves skirted her land without crossing it. Even the oldest villagers muttered that winter storms twisted oddly around her roof. Yet the boy never saw anything but kindness in her eyes. She taught him to climb, to listen, to watch, and to never speak his family name to outsiders. In a cold orbit high above Earth's shadow, a slaver frigate hung invisible to ground radar. Its hull was blackened to swallow starlight. Its crew wore arrogance as armor. They had studied this planet for months, mapping rural trails, intercepting unencrypted transmissions. Their target was a single human child reported to possess exceptional resilience. The aristocrat who commissioned the raid wanted a specimen for private research, though the reason was not shared with the crew. To them, it was a simple contract, another cargo run, another primitive youth drugged and shackled. In their planning chambers, holograms displayed the cabin, paths, and topography. They mocked the absence of security, the lack of weapons. They trusted their tranquilizer rifles, their drones, their atmospheric dampeners that silenced sound over entire valleys. "It will be clean," their leader said. "No traces left. The mother will think it an animal attack. Humans are fragile. They break easily." Dusk bled into the forest. The boy gathered firewood while his mother salted meat in the kitchen. Leaves shifted in unnatural patterns as cloaked drones descended through the trees, mapping movement and temperature signatures. The first dart struck his shoulder before he heard the faint whisper of air. He staggered, confused by the sudden coldness creeping into his veins. 2 more darts followed, slamming into his back. His breath came shallow, the world tilting. He tried to call out, but the sound died in his throat. Booted figures in camouflage armor materialized from the darkness, faces hidden by mirrored masks. They lifted his small frame with practiced ease. When an owl screeched overhead, the leader shot out of the sky for sport. The forest responded with an unnatural stillness, as if holding its breath. One operative muttered about the sudden static crawling along his visor display, but was hushed. Primitive interference. The leader said, "Keep moving." The boy's vision dimmed as he was carried toward the extraction beacon. Somewhere in the haze, he felt the ground tremble slightly, not from machines, but from something deeper. The temperature dropped. A branch snapped in the distance, though no one walked there. But the slavers were professionals. They ignored the prickling sensation along their necks. They reached the cloaked shuttle, secured the boy inside a containment pod, and lifted away into orbit without a trace, their boots leaving shallow prints that the night wind erased. When the mother returned from the well, the cabin door stood ajar. A single log lay in the path, dropped by hands that had been steady moments before. The air was wrong, too quiet, too still. She knelt where the boy had fallen, pressing fingers to the faint impression of his body on the earth. The soil was colder than stone. A dart's broken shaft lay in the moss. She picked it up and turned it between her fingers. Her breathing slowed. The shadows of the trees seemed to lean inward. The stars above shimmered faintly as though hiding. She did not cry out. She did not run to the village for help. Instead, she walked back to the cabin and shut the door. Inside, she set the dart on the table and examined its metal, its markings, its smell. Alien work. Her lips moved without sound as she whispered something old, older than the Empire's oldest fleets, older than the cities etched across its worlds. The wind outside shifted. Dogs miles away began to bark, and then fell silent. Somewhere deep in the forest, ice cracked though no frost lay on the ground. By the time night deepened, travelers passing the edge of the woods quickened their pace, claiming they felt unseen eyes on them. Birds refused to roost in the trees. The moon dimmed behind drifting clouds. In a high orbit, the slaver frigate jumped to faster-than-light speed, its crew celebrating an easy mission. They never noticed that every system registered a momentary spike in power drain just as they entered the jump corridor, as if something vast and ancient had brushed against the hull. The mother sat in darkness, unmoving, until dawn touched the window. Her hands rested calmly on the table. Her eyes reflected the faintest glimmer of green fire. When she finally rose, the door creaked open on its own. The forest path seemed to bow before her footsteps. Every root, every stone, every breath of wind marked her passing. The world itself felt colder now, as if waiting. Far above, among the stars, a name that had not been spoken aloud in decades began to echo in whispers across hidden channels and criminal markets. Old smugglers told stories to each other, their voices tight, their eyes wary. A witch that walked in shadow, a mother whose wrath broke fleets, the Baba Yaga, and she had been roused. The boy woke in darkness that smelled of metal and cold air. Restraints bit into his wrists and ankles, not crude shackles, but elegant devices designed to hold creatures far stronger than any human. A faint hum came from the walls around him, and he realized he was inside a containment pod on a vessel larger than any he could imagine. Through a narrow slit in the lid, he saw fragments of starlight smeared into streaks, faster-than-light motion carrying him deeper into unknown space. Distant voices spoke in a language he did not understand, clinical and unhurried, discussing him as if he were cargo. The Empire's slave intake stations were nothing like the brutal cages of primitive raiders. They were sterilized, automated, and orderly, where living beings were scanned, cataloged, and assigned market codes. The boy passed through layered checkpoints, gravity fields that suppressed muscle response, drones that probed his DNA, scanners that compared his metrics against other captives. He heard nothing of human voices, only the clicking of alien machines. In crowded holding bays, other species, furred, scaled, feathered, glanced at him with wary eyes. Though he was the smallest among them, none approached too close. Something in his stillness disturbed them. Whispers traveled through the ranks of the enslaved in dozens of tongues. There was something in his gaze, a steady, unblinking defiance that made the bravest glance away. Lights flickered overhead whenever he passed. One handler noted the odd static in his comms, blamed faulty equipment, and moved on without thought. Bureaucracy has no time for omens. Far from the boy, across scattered systems, silence followed the path of his mother. Remote supply depots lost contact. Patrol ships failed to report. Listening posts that once fed the Empire's intelligence network fell dark one by one, as if a shadow moved through hyperspace corridors faster than data itself. No distress calls came, only absence, and absence so complete it bred unease in even the most arrogant admirals. Smugglers spoke first. They traded rumors in hidden ports where imperial law never reached. A single name passed from lip to lip, never written down. A witch of earth, a figure from ancient human tales, walking among the stars again. Those who had crossed her path decades ago and lived swore never to speak her true name aloud. But whispers traveled faster than fleets. Baba Yaga hunts. Her methods were not battles, not open warfare, but erasures. A ship emerged from jump with every crewman dead, yet no hull breach, no sign of struggle. A command post was found cold and silent. Doors fused shut from the inside. Power cores intact, but drained as if life itself had been siphoned out. In spaceport taverns, hardened pirates trembled as they told an unseen craft that stalked trade routes, its presence heralded only by failing lights and a sudden drop in temperature. Every time it appeared, someone connected to human trafficking vanished. The boy, unaware of these events, endured experiments in a clinical chamber aboard a slaver convoy headed for the imperial capital. Alien scientists measured his cellular repair rates, probed his neurological responses, and found anomalies they could not classify, fragments of data that made no sense. His body healed faster than baseline. His brainwave patterns showed rhythms alien to any known human scans. One researcher wondered aloud whether this child was natural at all. Another dismissed it as primitive superstition. Their arrogance blinded them to the warning in front of them. In quiet moments between scans, the boy stared at the ceiling unafraid. He could almost feel his mother drawing nearer, like a weight pressing on the air. The instruments flickered when he thought of her. Once, the entire lab went dark for 3 full seconds, though every system carried redundant power. When lights returned, 2 technicians refused to continue, begging to be reassigned. They were ignored. The convoy altered course to avoid pirate-ridden sectors, unaware that its path now intersected with something far worse. In the darkness of deep space, sensors failed without cause, escorts lost formation, and drones sent to scout ahead returned transmitting only static. By the time officers realized they were being hunted, it was too late. The rear guard ship dropped off scans entirely. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. Panic ran through the ranks, yet commanders insisted it was a navigation malfunction. Imperial doctrine left no room for ghosts. Meanwhile, her trail cut deeper. She walked not through airlocks, but through shadows. Spaceports reported transient power failures moments before entire warehouses of contraband were emptied and crews found dead without wounds. An outpost trafficking in human captives was discovered hours after she passed through. Corridors frozen, terminals cracked by sudden cold, every slaver corpse wearing the same expression of silent terror. Surveillance feeds showed nothing but darkness moving against darkness, a blur of shape that the mind refused to hold. At the next major hub, Imperial intelligence caught fragments of unauthorized transmissions. Criminals shouting warnings. Do not touch the child. Do not anger her. Baba Yaga walks. High Command dismissed the rumors as cowardice. They issued orders to tighten security on human cargo shipments, convinced that a rogue syndicate was sabotaging them. The boys' convoy entered orbit around a heavily fortified transfer station, bristling with guns and guarded by cruisers. He was scheduled to be delivered personally to an aristocrat's private lab on the imperial capital. As Loader secured his containment pod, alarm screamed, and then cut off mid-wail. Doors refused to seal. Power flickered in cascading waves. Soldiers shouted into dead comms, rifles trembling in their hands as invisible pressure crushed the air around them. Hallways chilled to the breath-fogging point. A single security feed caught the outline of a woman's shadow, moving where no figure stood. She came for her son. The infiltration was silent and merciless. Guards were found lying on the deck with no mark on them, eyes open, frozen by fear so deep it stopped their hearts. Entire compartments depressurized without hull breaches, as if the station itself obeyed her will. She reached the detention wing within minutes. The boy felt her presence before she arrived. His pulse quickened. Restraints rattled against their mounts without him moving. Yet, when she breached the chamber, the pod was gone. In the chaos of her approach, Command had panicked and launched him in a high-security transport capsule directly to the capital, escorted by the Empire's fastest couriers. By the time she cut to the final door, only empty cradles and abandoned tools remained. A faint trail of ionized particles marked the capsule's launch vector. She stepped into the docking bay, eyes burning cold green, and every monitor in the sector went black. Her fury radiated outward, collapsing comm networks, freezing entire databanks with bursts of electromagnetic interference. The Empire's analysts tried to piece together what had happened, but found nothing but corrupted files and dead witnesses. News spread to the underworld like fire in dry grass. The witch had returned in full. Syndicates pulled out of human trafficking overnight. Smuggling rings burned their records. Entire cartels fled border systems rather than risk her notice. Even seasoned bounty hunters refused contracts related to Earth. The imperial capital gleamed beneath its shielded sky, a world of crystal towers and armored citadels where the ruling elite believed themselves untouchable. Vast fleets ringed the planet, layered in defensive formations that blotted out the stars. Inside palaces of glass and gold, aristocrats prepared for the arrival of a rare prize, a human child destined for dissection and study. The boy, locked within a sterile chamber, watched silent technicians in silver masks record his vitals. He did not speak, but the air around him felt colder with every passing hour, as though his mother's shadow already darkened the halls. Admirals briefed high command on the mysterious threat stalking their sectors. Entire convoys lost without combat, stations left hollow and frozen. Commanders who once laughed at rumors now whispered in guarded tones. Yet they assured their superiors that the capital was impregnable. Layers of shields, sensor nets, and strike wings would intercept any intruder long before reaching orbit. They had never fought something that didn't appear on screens. Across the outer systems, fleets scrambled to converge, but their movements only fed her trail. She did not hide. She moved with precision, bypassing strongholds, erasing only those who stood directly between her and the boy. A heavy cruiser deployed to intercept her failed to return. Its final transmission was an officer's scream before the line went dead. Another fleet sent to reinforce the capital never arrived, its ships drifting cold in deep space with crews frozen at their stations. Investigators found no damage, no battle, only silence. On the capital itself, strange malfunctions spread. Surveillance drones failed without cause. Power relays surged and burned out in districts closest to the spaceport. Citizens whispered of lights that flickered when no storm passed overhead, of sudden drops in temperature at midday. The aristocrats dismissed these omens as superstition, but soldiers felt the weight of invisible eyes on their backs. The boy's transport capsule descended into the laboratories beneath the Imperial Palace. Scientists worked quickly, running deep genetic sequencing, probing his cells for clues to his resilience. They found anomalies they could not explain, markers older than recorded human history, fragments that hinted at something engineered, or born of something far beyond natural evolution. Orders came from the highest offices. Extract every secret, no matter the cost. None questioned the order. None considered what might be coming to stop them. Then the sky over the capital changed. Orbital shields flickered, not from bombardment, but from an internal failure no one could trace. Strike wings scrambled into the upper atmosphere, but their formations scattered as comms went dark mid-flight. Pilots reported phantom readings, hull temperatures dropping to lethal levels in seconds, frost blooming across cockpit glass, even in vacuum. One by one, ships fell silent and coasted dead, engines unresponsive, until they burned in the thin air below. In the command spire, admirals shouted conflicting orders, routing power to defense grids that no longer obeyed. The enemy never appeared on sensors, never triggered alarms. Yet entire sectors of the city blacked out simultaneously. Streets emptied as fear spread faster than official announcements. The witch walked unseen, and the planet trembled at her passing. Inside the palace labs, technicians worked frantically, unaware that the outer perimeter had already collapsed. The boy sat calm, breathing evenly, while the instruments around him failed in sequence. Lights first, then monitors, then the sealed doors. When the final lock disengaged with soft hiss, the child stood without a word. The corridor outside was littered with corpses frozen in expressions of terror. No wounds on their bodies, no alarms raised. She had arrived. The palace's great halls twisted into silent mausoleums as she passed. Guards fired into shadows and died without seeing their killer. Marble floors frosted under her feet. Gold-plated walls cracked as if rejecting the Empire's decadence. No one saw her clearly, yet every survivor swore they felt her presence like a crushing weight, an ancient predator passing judgment. The boy felt it before he saw her, a pull through the darkness, and when the door of his cell opened, she stood framed in a faint green glow that made the air itself shiver. She crossed the chamber, placed a scarred hand on his shoulder, and the instruments around them burst in showers of sparks. For the first time in days, he smiled. She whispered nothing more than his name, but the word carried such force that every surveillance feed in the palace died instantly. High above, the Empire's ruling council tried to coordinate a defense, but their orders never reached the troops. Entire data vaults corrupted. Fleets received contradictory commands, and power grids overloaded until sections of the capital lay in darkness. Those who attempted to flee found every hangar sealed, every shuttle unresponsive. It was not siege by weapon. It was suffocation by fear and power beyond comprehension. When they emerged from the palace, mother and son walked through streets empty of life. Armored vehicles sat cold, crews inside stiff and lifeless. The city's spires burned with quiet flames where energy surges had ignited towers. Above, starships, once proud symbols of Imperial might, now orbited as derelicts, their lights extinguished, drifting like corpses. She did not stay to gloat nor to claim a throne. Vengeance was simple, clinical. The Empire had taken her child, and now the Empire would learn that some prey strikes back harder than any predator. As she departed with the boy, capital defense grids collapsed entirely. Other worlds watched helplessly as transmissions from their heart world ceased. No fleets were dispatched in response. There were no fleets left that dared follow. In the days that followed, whispers spread faster than light. Smugglers, soldiers, and rulers alike repeated the same warning. Do not touch humans. Do not provoke the Witch of Earth. Entire industries abandoned trafficking in human stock overnight, terrified that she would return. Planets loyal to the Empire broke away, fearing they would be next if they harbored those responsible. 1,000 star systems that once mocked humanity now spoke its name with trembling respect. No one ever claimed to have seen her clearly, yet every survivor described the same thing. The feeling of winter in their lungs, the sound of unseen footsteps, and the weight of an ancient legend walking among the stars. The Baba Yaga was no myth. She was real, and she protected her own. On a quiet forest world far from imperial ruins, a boy walked home beside his mother beneath the pines. Their cabin door creaked open, as if welcoming them back. No guard, no machines, no alien eyes dared follow. The forest breathed again, alive and warm, as though relieved its mistress had returned. Above that silent world, ships passing in deep space gave it wide berth. Captains marked on their charts not with coordinates, but with a single warning scratched in every tongue: untouchable.